Welcome to the Coach Speak podcast, built for coaches, by coaches, hosted by Jamie Bolton and Dustin Martin, sponsored by Ray Crowther, providing athletic training equipment since 1932, helping you dominate with fundamentals.
Welcome back to Coach Speak. Dustin Martin here with Jamie Bolton. We have a very special guest today. Special dear friend of my heart. Got to coach with him the last 2 years, Mr. Olindo Mare. Before we get going, this episode is presented by Team Builder, the #1 software for strength and conditioning coaches.
Yeah, so today, guys, we're getting into it with Olindo Mare. I coached with him at Cannon for 2 years, and like Dustin says, man, what a great coach and somebody that I really leaned on. Just what a great wealth of knowledge. He played 16 seasons in the NFL with the Dolphins, New Orleans, and Seattle, and then also with Carolina and Chicago. He scored over 1,500 points in his career, and before the NFL, he started at Syracuse and was later inducted into their Hall of Fame. Now he's turned high school football coach, and we're excited to talk about his transition from pro athlete to mentor and leader in the high school level. And we're just so excited to have you on, Coach.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So before we get started, just one thing that comes to my mind with us coaching together, it was kind of like this organic thing that happened at Cannon. You had a couple kids in school, and I can't remember exactly how. I think you just started maybe helping out, and I can't remember how do we even get to you coaching on staff? Did I just say, hey, man, we need you? I can't even remember.
No, I think I came out with Todd once, and then Landon
That's
was
right.
something like that. And then it was out at practice. And then I think you had said, like, do you want to come out and pregame? And it sounded like you were like, can you do me a favor and get all of this off my hand for me?
Of course. No,
and
you did,
course,
man.
Happy to get involved, and I never want to be pushy on the coaches. And I think I've told probably both of you this before, that don't ever worry about me wanting the head job. I don't think people realize what it takes to be a head coach, let alone a good head coach. Besides the amount of hours in school, out of school, like, it's a complete dedication to the game. And I've had my time of dedication to it, and there's nothing more than like giving a few hours and then shutting it down, where people don't realize that you guys have to watch practice after practice and prepare for and do all that stuff. So I think it was one of those points where it's like, hey man, whatever I can do to help, I'll be here at the game anyway. If you want me, never did I think I was going to be shagging balls for 4 years.
Then I reeled you in. Then I was like special teams coordinator, and then it was like,
then I got a title, and I had to do stuff. I got an email, and then I got a huddle. I'm still trying to learn how to do that.
Oh man, no, Coach. But just some things that come to mind from that moment of you helping out with kickers, and then end up being a really big role in our staff. I remember in the semifinal, really in the playoffs in 2021. You called a fake punt. You had this fake punt to Will. It was a run. And you said, Jamie, we're going to use it in round 1. I don't know if you remember this or not. We used it, and we got the first down, ended up winning. We were down 21-7 in that game. We came back and won in the first round. Second round against Metrolina, we used it in the first half, but you set them up. So you had the fake punt run with Will. Then you had the fake punt run and pass to, I think it was Duncan. And we ended up going down there and scoring. And that kind of set us up. And then in the state championship game, Todd Polino hits a 43-yarder to put us up 17. And then Luke Fox has the fumble, calls fumble on kickoff down there to set the tone. So special teams is obviously a huge role. And man, I just appreciate the time and effort and all that you put in, man, because it helped us win a championship, man.
Well, I think, first thing is like, for all of us was like, how do we get Will Jones the ball? Like, it's not a fake when you're putting the ball in the best player's hands, and obviously, he's done well at Davidson. We all trust Todd, see what he's doing. At the time, Luke was our best special teams player, and at some point, good players got to make plays, and they all did it. I always say, like, we can draw it up. We don't know how it's going to work out. I mean, nothing works out perfect, but actually Duncan, so, with Landon going to Citadel, he was there and was hanging out with Duncan last week.
That's cool.
So he got to see him, and so I didn't even know they had, this connection or communication still, but I'm glad that, like, they got that through Canon and, with football and stuff like that. But, yeah, it's good. I mean, anytime, right, you put the ball in your best player's hands, you're just nothing else you can do.
And I remember you were just so what one thing that kind of stood out to me was you were so good at knowing who the best players were, and you would dial it up each week. Like you would change, like on the kickoff team, like you would move Luke around and say, okay, like I'm studying their kickoff return. They're taking two and pushing him this way, or they're blocking him this way. And then you would move Luke to a spot where you would get a mismatch. And that happened in the state championship game. He got a free hit on their best player, calls a turnover. We go and score. I mean, those things are just, I just learned a lot from you on that. Not afraid to just kind of think outside the box. And I can't wait to hear how your NFL and college experience kind of led to that. What's your
Well,
thoughts?
I do remember, and Dustin didn't get all this, but I don't know if you remember the very first like scouting report I had was like 20 pages long. And I showed
All on
you, and
notebook paper,
yeah, and
like
I had written it
handwritten.
all down, and you were like, I don't think this is like, I don't think we're there yet. And it was like, we need, it was something like, do we want to go 5-5 or 6-4? And I had like everybody lined up on like whatever, obviously what I was used to. And, so I really had to dumb it down, which is really what you need at this level. And, but I was just so excited to be a part of it, and you guys, both of you guys let me do that and let me, kind of handle like my position, good or bad. And, we all had, you know, good plays, and there were things, like I still can't believe that like I didn't move, Luke when he got killed by that one guy. They were trying to hit him all game, and we kept moving him and moving him. When you find that one kid, run around four, he could have knocked four guys out, but he didn't touch any of them and just went for Luke. You know what I mean?
I remember that. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's different obviously in high school because, in especially at different levels and different schools, you have a few players. And at our level, where we are, you get 3 or 4 players that play both ways that are really good. It can change the outcome of a game.
Yep.
And you know, maybe 1 or 2 of those guys on the field for both teams makes it to the next level, and who knows if he becomes a star or doesn't. And I think what kids don't realize these days is that, like, you know, if you're a star in high school, most likely you're going to be you're just going to be an average guy on teams, unless you're some freak of nature or something. And coaches want to see like progressively, like, can you follow these directions and do these plays on teams before I put you out there in real situation on defense or offense? Um, and some kids embrace it and some kids don't. Some kids are too good to play special teams. And then some kids turn out to be great special teamers and they just go on and be a starter and never play teams again. It's hard to get kids to understand that because I think every kid wants to be a starter at their position they believe they should be at. Nothing wrong with that, but reality is sometimes pretty hard to understand for somebody that young.
Yeah. Man, I'll never forget, Coach. There's 2 moments that come to my mind. From our first year, or they're both from our first year together. But I remember when we first met. Jamie called me when he first got you on. He said, "Man, you'll never guess who's doing my special teams for me." He said, "The legend Olindo Mare," and I was just I was cracking up. I said, "Man," I said, "this dude lucked up and got a
No
NFL
doubt.
guy to do his special teams." So then, we get there and we go through the off season and stuff, and it's first game. It's a dogfight in the first half of 7-7, and Coach, I'll be honest, this is the first time I've ever seen a special teams coach do this. But it was so great. I was like, man, I kind of like what he does. So I'll never forget, you had 3 laminated sheets and you'd get in your huddle and you'd tell the kids, "Hey, we're doing this one." And I said, okay, let's see how this works. Well, I remember you had 2 different pump blocks and Luke Fox came to the sideline and said, "Hey, Coach, we need to do this right here, this one." You said, "Okay, run it." Luke Fox blocks the punt. And I was like, and that moment was just like, every coach needs to see this because you got to listen to your players because they have good ideas too. And obviously we all know Luke Fox, great dude. And then, Coach, I want to know kind of what went through your head. So let's fast forward first year to senior night versus Metrolina. And, we throw a pick 6 to go down 13. There's 1:30 to go. And we score real quick. And me and you had already talked about going onside. Like, what was going through your mind right before we kicked that onside kick?
Uh, I would, first thing on my mind is like, did we rep it enough? You know, I mean, that's did we rep it enough? And maybe, and even though you rep it enough, like individually as the kicker and the coach and whatever, did we rep it enough as a team, as like who's going to be where and who's going to be what, because half of it is the matchup. You got to put, if you got these guys blocking these guys, they got to block it. Like, don't turn for the ball. Don't look, your job's not, we don't put linebackers in there to handle the ball. It's just how it goes. You know what I mean? So, but I mean, all that stuff, I feel like some of those plays and that we had with both of you guys, were just like, there were better plays and like more exciting as a parent than it was like when we made big plays. I think when you're at the professional level, like it's expected, you know what I mean? It's like you draw it up and like it worked in practice all week and it's going to work in the game. Then it works in the game. And you're like, I knew it. You know what I mean? Where then you get in high school and you're like, I draw it up and you're like, man, I don't know. And you're looking at me and you're like, well, we ain't got a choice. And then it works. And you're like, son of a gun. I can't believe that worked, you know? But I mean, you got to put faith in these guys. And, with Luke and, when I put the sheets up is basically like a generic, these are the blocks that we can run. But you're out there. You got to tell me, like, if this guy's double teaming you, I can't see all that. So when they do that, it actually like it's beneficial to us, as like, hey, this guy's, he's shaded this direct, whatever it is. So I said, Luke, you know better than I do. You tell me, run, it's almost like run what you want. I'll draw it up, but you do what you have to do. And those good players, they make plays for you. I mean, not bad. You got a guy, coming off the edge or up the middle, 6'4", long arms, who's willing to sacrifice. I mean, you wish you had 10 more of those guys.
No doubt. So coach, I know I kind of, reeled you in on starting to coach in high school. Why do you continue to coach now? What is it about high school that you really enjoy? I know you have a son that just kind of come through too, but man, you don't coach just your son. You coach a lot of kids. And, talk to us a little bit about like what inspired that transition from the NFL to coaching currently.
I think you play long enough that like it's part of your like it's part of your body, like it's part of who you are. And I don't know if coaching is who I am or it's just I love being around the kids. I do know that I have friends that are older and their kids have graduated high school and even college, and I know that when I talk to them, the first thing they say is get as much time in now as you can. And as you guys know, Jamie, we started with Landon as a freshman.
Uh-huh.
Important. Todd got COVID and cramped, and Landon was a starting safety over Mason at 9th grade. And he went in there and kicked and punted. I think his first punt was like 9 yards, and he barely made an extra point. And so, like, come till today, and like it's over. I mean, that's 4 years of like, and so it happened that fast. And so, like, I knew it because my oldest one was playing soccer and I was coaching him. And I just wanted to, whatever I need to do to spend as much time, because once they get to college, as you guys know, you played in college, like your way, like there's just other things are happening in your life. You're growing up, you're moving out, you don't need as much time with mom and dad. So I just figured I want to spend as much time with my boys as I can. Just happens to be that they're doing something that I know although at some point I don't believe they listen to everything I say or they don't trust, I don't think you know what you're talking about, Dad. You know what I mean? But I
Just
think
look at the stats.
And I mean, and nobody talks about that either. Like how hard it has to be to coach your son. You know what I mean? Because they don't look like they look at you as like coach, but they also look at you like dad. You know what I mean? So it's like, man, like Dad, you like what are you talking about, Dad? You know what I mean?
I'll tell you the hardest part, honestly, was when I got my boys, and it was really this year. And I don't know if Dustin, we even talked about it, but like after we would get done with practice, and I know Dustin saw me blow up sometimes, and half of the time was at my kid. Cause like not only do I expect you to do something, but like it's me, like you're going to have to get in that car all the way home too now. So, but I think what was hard was when we would do practice and stuff. And then like on the sideline, and, a lot of the kids knew my background and stuff, that they would want to talk about experiences in the NFL and all this kind of stuff. But with Landon and Rylan there, it was hard sometimes because they want to talk to their friends. and I didn't want to intervene with like their high school conversations and then like have me be a part of it. So I would have to step away. Sometimes I'd like go to the end zone and run sprints, or I'd try to find something to do so they can have their social quality time with their friends and not, you know what I mean? And that was hard because, the kids want to talk to you and I look like like I'm a, snob or something like that, not trying to talk to them. I'm just trying to give them space so they can be who they are. And, I think that was the hardest part, especially during games, cause I'd be like, I tell all the kids that were like near landing, like, get out of here, like leave him alone. He's got to focus, whatever it is. And then like I turn around after he would, do a punt or a kick or something, and they're all talking to him and he's laughing. In my mind, I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like, it's one kick. Like, I don't care if you made, like, you got the rest of the game to go. You can't get your mind, And then it was like, but he's got to enjoy it. He's got to learn the hard way sometimes, But
Yeah, so talk
that
a
was
little about
rough.
your style coaching like kickers too. Like, is that so when you're coaching, you've been a kicker. Have you had like multiple coaches? You had good ones and bad ones, and like, how does that kind of molded your style, just coaching the kicker specifically?
I think today's day, and I think we all could probably relate to it. I think they're just better than we are. Like back in the day, and I'll relate it to like golf. If you look like golf, like, in the Tiger Woods when he was young, all those guys, a lot of them had different swings. They were just good. You know,
Mhm.
Nowadays you look at a high school kid and they're like robots. I mean, they look like they're pro right now. They're all like, they're like Gumby, they're flexible, they're perfect. Where back then it was like, you got Jim Furyk swinging all over the place, you know what I mean? And it just worked. Yeah. And so, I think teaching a kid for me was always best to do just like, what do you do good? I want to help you do that better. Not this is the only way to kick. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And,
Mhm, yeah.
at this point, like not everybody's going to make it. So you just want them to be the best version of them, whether it's, a B or C player. You know what I mean? I don't think
Yeah.
it's, I don't think it's good to teach. I mean, I did do some specific kicking lessons on the side years ago, well, when I retired, and I just stopped doing it because unfortunately, some people think their kids are great and they're
Yeah.
not. And I had a hard time telling somebody that your kid was better off playing the trombone than kicking field goals. You know what I mean?
And is
Uh,
it something like, is it more like mental or physical, or is there a mixture? Like when you see a kid, you can see a kid in pre-practice, hitting 55 yarders, but like, is that at that point when they try to, mesh into, and this could be punting too, but like you try to mesh that into the game, it's not so, they look a lot less talented in the game. Is that a
yeah,
mental thing?
I, I mean, everything's mental these days. I
Right.
think in a kid, I think the biggest thing for high school kids and sports in general is confidence. I just feel like you can tell when a kid's confident if, whether it's a quarterback or a punt returner or anybody, they just, when they have that feeling of like, no matter like, you want it to be like a reaction. And anytime a kid does something, like if he gets off the field and gets yelled at or screamed at or told he's not good or whatever it is, it just kind of like, it kind of shuts him down. He's scared to make mistakes. And when you're scared to make mistakes, you can't react very quick because you're thinking first. And when you think first in football, it's over. And so I feel like, to get kids to do, and that's how we would kind of do it on kickoff, and even as the gunners on punt, just give me the best athletes. And I would just tell them, like, here's what I think you should do. And then, like, you get, guys like Jez, who was just fast and athletic, and he would do the completely wrong thing, but it would work out for him. And he was like, see, and you're like, all right, you're, I don't know. Like, I'm just telling you what I see on film for the last 9 games, go right. But yet he would go left and they can't catch him and he'd make a play. So, you get a couple of those kids, but I think confidence in a young kid right now is there's nothing better to have,
Well, it's like, I play golf and I'm not very good, but like, imagine, let's just imagine we stand with the golf club on the sideline for 8 minutes and not swing. And then you say, all right, go out there and put a 280-yard drive in the middle of the fairway. Like, think about the pressure that is on that. And it's the same thing with kicking a field goal.
Yeah.
You might get a couple practice shots into the net on the sideline, but it's like,
hey man, but somebody's teeing it up for you. It's like you don't get to your own ball up.
no,
Like you got a holder, you got a snapper, you got guys coming at you. That's
Yeah.
like way more pressure.
I've learned that like your holder has got to be, well, first of all, like, the punter, the punter's got to have the top 2 or 3 hands on the team. He's got to, because receivers drop the ball too sometimes, but it goes unnoticed sometimes. You know what I mean? If you're a punter and you drop it, like, you drop one in the NFL and there's somebody coming in on Tuesday. You drop 2 in the NFL and you're going away on Tuesday. You know what I mean? So, when you get a holder that's really good, I mean, he could make or break you very easily. The snap obviously helps. You don't really have to, you just need to get it in that body frame or whatever. Spirals do help too. But that confidence of sitting there. I remember we played a game against Cleveland back in the day in Miami. It was around Christmas, and it was like, I think I kicked off, we scored, they scored. It was like 7-7. We went like 2 hours and 15 minutes standing still. It's like the coldest night. It's one of the coldest games in Dolphin history. It was like 40 something degrees, and we come out and it's like 50 or 52 yards to win the game, and you're like, are you kidding me? Like, we can't kick an extra point or anything like closer than this. So yeah, it becomes a little bit rough. I think, thank God for the kicking net and the space. Dustin got me a new kicking net. I know that Jamie had that one there. Every time I used to kick it, that thing would fall down, hit me in the head on the way down. I
That
dropped.
thing would end up in like every location on campus. It was like, where's the kick in it? It was like, oh, it's in the corner. Oh, it's on the field.
The new one took like 65 minutes to put together.
Oh.
Like, it was the most complex thing. I felt bad for Olindo on game days. Was the worst day because he had to put the kicking net together.
Oh my gosh.
I told Ryland, I said, when we leave, we're taking all the stickers off and putting them in different spots. The next person is never going to put this thing back together.
That's awesome.
And then finally towards the end, I had like Landon broke it down one time, Jack broke it down one time. Putting it together was the hard part. Nobody wanted to do it. And they don't have that much. They don't have that much time. I don't mind doing it or whatever. But I mean, listen, anything you can do to help, you know how it goes. Every man for himself out there, and trying to get as much time as we can. I know that I used to take.
We were always squeezing you. We were squeezing you on the time.
Listen, I tell you, all my special teams coaches, they used to just go until the coach says stop, because they tell us they're going to cut us off anyway. So you might as well get as many minutes in as you can, because if it rains or it lightnings or if practice doesn't go well, or if this 7-on-7 sucks, we're not doing pump here. You know what I mean? And it was just like, get what you can.
You're the reason we got the segment timer with the buzzer.
Yeah.
Like, man, Amari's over 3 minutes.
Dustin,
come on, man.
Dustin,
you get mad at me like, coach won't give me no time. Like, hey man, we're on segment timer now. Like, what look, the
Dustin used to give me a countdown. He'd be like, 1 minute.
Yep. Hey, we'd start the period to be 10 minutes, and as soon as 9 minutes hit, you got 9 minutes left. Good.
Get it going.
Man, but one thing I will say, so those that are listening that don't know, Coach has, he has 4 kids, correct, Coach?
Yep.
So the 2 that I know, Landon, I coached as a junior, senior, and then his youngest son was an 8th grader and a 9th grader this last year. But man, I'll never forget this about Landon. Every time I gave him a field goal opportunity, whether he made it or missed it, he'd come up, dap me up, and say, appreciate the opportunity. You know what I mean? And I think that speaks volumes of him, because he understands his part of the game is so important, but he doesn't take each kick for granted, because he knows there may be games we don't get a kick. There may be games we do. So I really appreciate that from him.
Yeah, I think he did, better field goal kicking, and he did less practice because he was focusing more on punting. I didn't really, and I was like, kicking the other way. I was like, with both of them too, because Ryland really can't punt, or at least not yet. And, I think what would have been better is if, Landon, if they had like better competition, you know what I mean? The only competition was like after practice, if I would like put my own shoes on and, try not to get hurt or something and kick with Landon just to, make him focus. But I think, you guys did a really good job. And Dustin and I even went to like, shoot, at some points we had Landon on one side and Rylan on the other. And, I know we got, I got after the guys one time just because, I think it was Brady must have blocked 5 in practice one day, and he just couldn't figure out, like, you know, at some point somebody's gonna watch this, and I told Landon, I says, you're gonna have to, like, don't be a prick, but you're gonna have to tell guys in the huddle before we kick a extra point or field goal in the game that you need to say something, like, you know, and I don't know, we're not allowed to curse on the show, but, my coaches used to say, if you're going to get your butt whooped, do it in 2 seconds, because after that, the ball's gone. So if and I don't know how many times I would help guys up off the ground. They'd be staring up like, did we make it? But that was their job.
Yeah.
They were the backup center guard.
I use that to this day with our PAT team, man. Just take it for like 2.5 seconds, man.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do.
It sucks. It sucks.
PAT and kickoff return may be the worst teams on the field. You just stand there, you're trying to block, and they're just teeing off on you.
And don't let them fool you, guys. We were out there, I think it was 2021, and I saw Coach Mare line up a 55-yarder cold. Like, hadn't been doing anything. Probably, I think he had tennis shoes on, maybe a polo and some khaki shorts, probably tucked in, backwards hat.
Probably looked good.
Just drills one, man.
Glasses
just
hanging
drills
right
one,
here.
like from
Glasses.
55.
No
And
pressure.
I know now, Coach, what are you about 65 now? So that was probably, what, 60 years old?
Like Dustin on the range.
That's right, man.
Dustin's good on the range. I seen him before.
Oh, yeah.
Killing it.
Coach saw me on the range, and as soon as we hit the first tee, it was no bueno.
So this is what I want to know. So with being a kicker and your experience too, and I coach quarterbacks, and I think there's a lot of pressure there too. And there's pressure for all positions, but I think kickers and quarterbacks typically probably carry a lot of the weight in terms of decision making for quarterbacks and being able to deliver the ball. Kickers, obviously, game on the line kind of stuff. And you talked about confidence. What is your style in trying to build up confidence? And I know it's probably really difficult, like even with your own son, but like even with Todd, I know Todd was talented too. How do you build that confidence with them and kind of talk to us about that? Because I'm really interested to know how I can build confidence in my quarterback.
Well, I think for kicking, obviously quarterback is, the most superior position on the field. And, that just controls the game. But, as a kicker, like, I think the average, and I'm off a yard or two, but the average NFL field goal is somewhere between 33 and 35 yards. And I think, a lot of kids, right? Like, they're trying to kick 50, 60 yarders, and you can see them all over the internet doing these things. And it's great. You need to be able to do that in case of emergency, but you need to make the ones that count. Jimmy Johnson was my coach in Miami for a few years. And he's like, I know that things are going to happen, but you need to make the ones that count. You need to make the ones before the half. You need to make the ones in the fourth quarter, and you need to make the ones that are going to, flip the scoreboard. And so, I think in practice you kick a lot of, and in high school, I mean, I hate to say it, but like those short field goals, those angles are almost harder. I know the pressure's harder in the league.
The hashes are so wide.
But them damn. So I think building confidence and building a bunch of short kicks that kids, maybe they go 9 for 10 or 10 for 10 in a practice, even if they're only 35 or 40 yards, is bigger than just, and then maybe you throw a long one in at the end of the game for sprints, especially if you want them to run them anyway, but I think doing that and just, and I'm sure you guys do it on offense, right? You give me, the quarterback, your game plan is give me your 10 best plays that you love the most.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you use them or not is one thing, but like, what are you most comfortable with? So, if, the things aren't working out and he's throwing a pick or two or the deep, we're not blocked, you can always have your like plays to go to that he's so comfortable with. Okay, we're going to get 2 or 3 yards. We're going to get a slant. We're going to get, I think anything like that you can do to a kid, especially a young kid, and then they start building that up, and it makes you feel like I'm back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like building up, like get some easy throws early for the quarterback. Yeah. Get some easy ones. Make sure he's going to feel really confident with the read. Don't make it too complicated. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long's Rylan been kicking, Coach?
Since 7th grade.
Because let me tell you something. He's only kicked 3 years, and that kid, I wish every kid had the confidence of that kid. I'll never forget first year, his legs bothering him. He's an 8th grader. And you looked at him, you said, Rye, why don't you just take today off? Just take it easy. He said, nah, I'll never be better than Landon if I do that. And dude went and kicked like 70 field goals. I watched him. And it's just his, like, if his body can catch up with his confidence and his drive, he will be Landon. He's coming for Landon. That's all I can say.
He's gained 30 pounds.
Wow.
He was like, I think we say he was like 86 pounds or something like that, like his 8th grade year.
We gave him small varsity pants, and he looked like a pirate because he had to roll them up. Dude, it was the funniest thing.
I think the first extra point he made.
We only had 4 smalls, and they were and that should tell you about our team. And all the receivers and corners had them already. So Rylan had a medium, and they looked like he was wearing like jogging pants. The knee pads were like shin guards. And he was like,
I asked him, I said, Rod, didn't I give you a small? He said, Coach, they stole him out my locker and gave me mediums.
Gosh.
So I said, hey, man, next week I'm going to hide them in your helmet. And he come out on the field, and they were still big. I said, dude, I thought I hit them. He said, you did. These are smalls. I said, oh, I'm sorry.
I think one of the greatest moments at all at Cannon was when he made the extra point. I think when he was maybe in 6th or 7th grade, and I can't remember when. That was my last year or something, and he made that thing.
The first 3 or 4, he about had a heart attack.
Yes,
he made it, and I think I
think they carried him on the shoulders or something. I can't remember what they were doing.
Yeah, made him do some dumb dance or something like that. And I was like, listen,
it was awesome.
You can't be doing that going 1 for 4. This ain't baseball. You're not going to the Hall of Fame.
The ones that count. The last one is the ones that count, man.
Yeah, yeah. So he's
I remember this season. I think it was this past season. Landon was sick. Like he had like touching pneumonia or something. You know, he was pretty sick. And he said, hey man, I know he's not coming to school Monday or Tuesday. And you know, we have that rule where like if you miss practice, obviously you're not going to play the whole game. And as much as you know, it's out of Landon's control. Like I hated it for him. Like I'm glad it didn't get serious. But it's like I hated it for Landon, but I was excited that Rylan got to start. Like Rylan kicked the first kickoff, and like I don't know if that meant anything to him, but it looked like it did when he did it. And so it's kind of full circle moment. Like we stood on our standards, our expectations. Yeah. Guy misses practice, he doesn't play the whole game, and then we also got Rye to come in and kick some kicks.
Thank God we didn't have to punt. You know, that would have been. You know, he's not bad. I know that we did like, you know, kicking off is fun because you can play so many different ways on a kickoff. And, you know, we got to use Rylan and Landon a few times this year. One where Rye was kicking it and, you know, Landon just played safety like he always does. And the other one, you know, Rye did the onside kick and they're both pretty good at the onside. I feel like is, especially when it's kind of a surprise deal. But, you know, as a parent to see them both on the field, you know, is in, you know, like my wife is like, you know, do it more. I can get more pictures. And I was like, it's not how it works. You know, we can get, you know, we can try. But I think, you know, it's good to see them interact and to be with the team and
they'll remember that forever too.
Thing. You never know because you don't really know. I mean, you know, you never know what happens in there. I mean, shoot for what, maybe, you know, I know Landon for like a month. He was practicing linebacker, and
oh yeah, he was. He came. He
said, "I'll play, but I don't want to go to meetings." And I was like, "I don't know if that's going to work."
Yeah, man. Landon wasn't scared to hit somebody, man. He got a personal foul for hitting the kid out of bounds on punt. And I'll be honest, I don't ever I'm not pro do dirty things because I don't think his intention was dirty, but he lit that kid up where I couldn't even be upset because he lit him up so good.
Pat McAfee style.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it reminded me of.
Well, you know, he's bigger than a lot of the kids. I used to tell him, you know, I mean, I was like Rylan. I graduated high school. I was like 150 pounds, you know. Now, Rylan just hit 130 pounds. I mean, for a kid who was a string bean most of his life. So, you know, he does have this hope of like, I'm going to be bigger and better than all of you anyway, you know, which is good to have. You still got to do it, but yeah, it's good that he's there. And I think now that, they're going to school together every day, back and forth, lacrosse, football,
Yeah.
the younger one gets to mature. Landon had that his first year. He got to drive home with Todd every day. Todd's, great kid. Then, next year he did it with Will Crispino with lacrosse, another really good kid. So Landon's had some pretty good mentors. Hopefully he's doing that to his little brother, not just picking on him all the time. But um, it's crazy how fast it goes. I mean, we're
Yeah.
gonna have one kid left,
No
and
doubt. And it's funny, Coach, because you're just talking kind of about those teenager things. So what do you think your biggest adjustment was from like working with like professional athletes to working with teenagers? How did that kind of go? What's the challenges with that?
I mean, it's just 101. It's like you got to start with your left foot. You got to bend down like you're, athletic at some point, go when the ball's snapped. You know what I mean? It's just like, I mean, you just got to start from scratch. And I get it. I know, if, it's like you have a quarterback coach in the NFL. And, I remember somebody saying this about, Marino back in the day. And like, you don't think we tell him how to throw it, do you? You know what I mean? Like, we might tell him where to throw it or what's going to be open. But like, at this point, you're supposed to know what you're doing. And I'm sure in college they play with mechanic, but at some point, like these kids, are that good because of where they've already gotten. Like Todd was already kicking good. I didn't go in there and say, "Hey, Todd, do this," and he starts making every field goal. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, I think high school is just it's so much fun because like you really don't know what you're going to get Friday night. I mean, you do, but you don't. You know what I mean? You're like, we could, and we could light this team up, and then it's like 21-0 at half. You're like, what the hell just happened? Like all that we just did all week is nobody did anything right. You know what I mean? And then you look back, and as a coach, you're like, did I do something wrong? Like, because anytime something happens as a coach, you always have to look in the mirror and go like, man, there were times where I was like, I don't think like that's a terrible call, and then that's when we start doing the cards and the easy stuff, like, okay, the flag's red, white, and blue. We're going to go blue on Friday night, guys. Like, that's a 33% chance you're going to get it right, you know? And like, it worked sometimes. Still, they were like, well, is it red, white, and blue? Or, you're like, oh, man, you know,
No
man.
doubt. I think we all kind of struggle with that too. It's like sometimes you feel like things are going really well, and then there's sometimes, man, I got too much offense in, or we got too much stuff in. We had to dial it back, and it's like just go back to running our stuff. Like let's don't make it overcomplicated. And then yeah, especially it gets hard when those really good things work really well early, and then later on you got to really dial it back
Yeah,
when
I
you've kind
think,
of overextended.
I think coaches, I think we all do it. And I know I do it too. I think we all get excited because we love the game and we try too much, and I think it just, there's like certain things that like work and they're good. And, maybe you let the other team beat themselves. Maybe they get frustrated, where we
Mm.
just like, oh, well, we got them for 1 yard. They got 1 yard gain out of that the last two times they did that. We want to get them for -1. And you're like, 1 yard's fine. Let's just do the same. You know what I mean? And we're like, no, we're
Greedy.
going to sack them. We're going to get an
Uh-huh.
interception. We're going to, and then like all hell breaks loose. And it's the same thing. Like we be kicking it right, tackle inside the 20. We're going to go left and change it up. Left touchdown. God,
Yeah.
it's just one of those,
It's like getting cute on offense, man. I'm sure it's the same way. It's like, hey, man, we're killing them with power, 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 then counter, then power, then counter. It's like, oh, let's do a play action and pick. It's
Pick.
like,
Yep.
dude, what are we doing, man? So
Well,
yeah,
I remember, Coach, like I would give you pretty much full reign. You'd be like, "Hey, how you feel about a punt fake?" I said, "Coach, if you think we can get it, go for it." Like, because I mean, man, I would be sitting there watching our kickoff return, and then I'd watch and I'd watch. And I'm like, "Where'd the ball go?" And the Lindo done called some kind of reverse, and it's coming down the other sideline. I'm looking at the wrong guy. So, well, I said that was a perfect time. I'm glad he called that because I lost the ball. So, man, I'll
you
never
look
forget
at you
those.
look at some of it and you're like, there's three guys back there. You know which guy's getting it. It's gonna be the fastest, the starter. Like I mean, we're trying to give somebody a breather, you know what I mean? And we're not giving it to this guy. I mean, we did it sometimes, like we're like, I know, and all coaches do it, both of you did it. It was like, hey, we're winning. We ain't kicking it to whatever, 23. and you say, don't kick it to 23. I'm like, all right, we're not going to kick it at 23. And then Landon tries too hard, hooks it, kicks it right to 23, and
Like,
they
what
run
are
it
we
right
doing?
down. They run it right down your throat.
Coach Mare
You're
would look at me and say,
dude.
"Hey, what do you want to do, Coach?" I said, "I don't care what we do, just don't kick it to that dude. That's the only thing I care about."
I just
And
say,
like,
man, kick it out of bounds.
Yeah. That's like the most. That's like backing up and just falling down as a quarterback. You know, kick it out of bounds
Just
is like,
kick it out of bounds,
yeah.
guys.
You know, you're like, you know what, Grant Mills, come over here and just toe this thing out of bounds. You know, you can't put that on your record, but it happens sometimes. You know, I mean, it
Yeah.
happened. It happened to me sometimes. You know, we played Carolina in preseason, and they had a guy, D'Angelo Williams was a pretty good running back. He was a rookie, and he took it out like 9 deep. And I was kind of being lazy. I was like, oh, it's out. He ain't touching it. He's a rookie he's obviously going to make the team, but he's trying to make a name. And he brought it out. By the time I got to him, you were like, man, that guy's fast, you know? And coach was, you know, he was like, listen, I told you, you either kick it out of the end zone or you kick it high enough where we can get down there. There's no in between. And I'm thinking like 9 deep's pretty good, but ain't good enough, I guess, right? You know,
That's right.
learn your lesson, you know, and I'll tell you what, we didn't kick it that way anymore to him. I can promise you that.
Well, it's like everybody says, don't throw an interception. Like, why are you throwing it to the other team? Well, it's probably just as hard not to kick it to the other team too. So that makes sense, man.
Well, you know,
nah,
a lot of people don't realize, you know, how much, and I think Dustin had said it this year. I think you were getting frustrated at one point with somebody or something. And they were like, man, if you have a problem, like you come watch film for 5 hours and like, you know, we're not trying to run this play or we're not, you know, I promise you, we're trying to tackle the guy. It's just like this guy, you know, it'd be like we do a kickoff return. We're all dropping to the 30 and we're blocking out. Okay. We're all going to drop to 30 and block to our sideline. And one guy goes the other way, knocks 3 of our guys out. The hole opens up and you're like, well, why don't we just let him run up the middle? And I know it happens. And I remember Dustin, you just saying that to somebody. I swear I thought it was like a parent had said, like, why don't we throw this play or that play? And I
that sounds about right.
talking to the
Oh,
coaches.
somebody was suggesting plays from the sideline. That's
Yeah,
weird.
and I remember Dustin talking to the coaches, and he goes, "Well, if they say anything, you just tell them they can come watch film and drop what they want to draw up." And I
That
was
sounds
like,
just like
"Yeah,
Dustin.
I hear that internally. I hear it.
Yeah,
You
that
can't
sounds
say
like
that.
me.
You can't say it,
That's
Cannon, but you can say it to me."
That sounds like it. Sounds like me. Hey, man, I think it's a good time for our sponsor, Team Builder. Coaches, are you wanting to keep your athletes accountable and engaged? Team Builder isn't just for programming workouts. It connects athletes with their training through leaderboards, progress tracking, and real-time feedback. Take your strength program to the next level through Team Builder, a software built by coaches and backed by data. Sign up for the 30-day free trial in the link in our bio with the promo code CoachSpeak.
All right, guys, getting into the next segment. Coach has already talked about a lot of his experiences as a high school coach, and we really want to kind of get into special teams. I think special teams for me is where not only did you provide so much, insight with our kickers, and we had really great kickers and their performance, but really I like the special team stuff that you did with the drills and all that. So how do you approach special teams at the high school level? Like, I mean, I know we talked a little bit about it, you had to dumb it down, but what are some like key things some non-negotiables with high school special teams?
Well, I think, believe it or not, I think the second half of the last season we did with Dustin, we did a couple drills that I went back and looked at stuff that, like, you know, I'm always asking buddies what they're doing. Like, what's the, you know, because everything is like, you know, we're always copying something from something. Somebody's already, you know, let's try this in 1970, and then they find it and bring it back, you know. And I think in high school, one of the biggest things is that, like, on special teams, that it's always full speed. And I know we say it like it's common thing, right? And I used to say, I think it was my first meeting every year, and I always used to tell the kids, like, do they know what common sense is? And common sense is not that common to everybody. You know, not everybody's got it. So, like, I would have to say, like, okay, this time when we kick off, we're all going to run as fast as we can, you know? And I think everybody needs to know that, like, what their role is as a kickoff or a punt return or whatever it is, that, like, your job is that one specific job, not to do yours and the next guy's. And I think them buying into, like, what you're trying to do, you know, and being a coach trying to make them believe they can do it and that that's going to work, that's the hardest part. because we're trial and error too. You know what I mean? Just like you guys. I mean, you draw up 50 plays and you run them at the end of the week. You're like, well, 10 of those suck. We're not doing those. You know, in, special teams, there's, less time obviously to do it. And then what happens in special teams is a lot of times your starters, are being saved because they're playing two ways or they're tired. They're getting the ball all the time. I remember Colby this year. Colby was back and forth. He's playing corner and receiver. He's our punt returner. He's our kick returner. I got him as a safety. I mean, the last 5 games, this poor kid cramped every game. And so when that stuff happens, it's like you start, and then at the end of the game, you got like 10 different guys in that are just begging, coach, put me in anywhere. If we can just find a way to say everybody's got to run full speed. And we did a couple of those drills. We did a couple like speed drills, and I feel like it worked towards the end. I think kids had a good time. And I think I learned from all the coaches, and I've had some great coaches from Dan Reeves to Jimmy Johnson. I was with Sean Payton, Mike Holmgren, Pete Carroll, Lovie Smith in Chicago for, a little bit. But I think one thing that they all did was they all made those guys compete in practice against each other. Even though, like, if you're a starting receiver, that number 2 corner, his job was to shut you down. And like, that was what he wanted to do, because he wanted to prove to the coach that he can play against the number 1 of the other team. And so Pete would call it like, competition Wednesday, and every Wednesday, whatever it was. And a lot of teams do it, they'll do one-on-ones and they'll put it up in, this is on film. The next day in the morning at 8 a.m., you're watching one-on-ones with the entire team and everybody else, and I think like you learn, like, I better do this right or I'm going to get, everybody's going to see this on TV tomorrow. Last thing you want to do is be on that TV a lot in the morning, So I think if I could teach one thing in teams, was just, it's got to be full speed, and it's like any other position. But if you wait, you're in trouble,
Yeah, I remember you do some kickoff drills, which really kind of helped us in all aspects, but just sprinting, defeating or avoiding the block, and then tackling the tackling wheels. You know what I mean? I remember just something as simple as that drill, but I can attest to what you're saying. Like, things that we were bad at, you would go back to like day 1 drills. Okay, guys, we're not very good at this. We're just gonna go all the way back to what we worked in preseason fall camp, and we're going to do this in week 5 because this is what we got to get better at. And so, coach, what I want to kind of hear a little bit, is as far as kicking goes and like special team development, say we're in season, kind of talk through what you think your best sequence of working special teams throughout the week is. What do you like working on Mondays, Tuesdays, and so on in the high school level?
I think if you have a guy like, most high school, they have a kicker and a punter. They got one guy that kind of does everything. I think it's, if you can do like punt and punt return one day, then he just kind of stays in that form and that motion. He can practice and warm up, so you don't have the luxury of having 3 or 4 fields and holders and guys shagging and doing all these other things to get you ready. So I think it helps to do all that. Maybe the next day we would do kickoff return. And then to me, there's nothing that's going to replicate a field goal. And if I had to be the head coach, I would do field goal every day. You'd get 10 field goals, 15 field goals every day. And you would do your half line, and it would just be rep. It just, because I don't want to say anybody, but a lot of people can make 20, 30-yard field goals by themselves on a stick when nobody's watching. But can they do it when everybody's yelling, right? The head coach is rushing you to get off the field. Your dad's screaming at you because the ball's not high enough, right? And, the ball's on the ground, and like, guys aren't bent over, right? And they're getting, all that, stuff. I think, there's just not enough reps in field goal, like anything else in football or sports. Like, there's nothing better than a live rep, and
yeah, try to simulate the game.
And it's the same with punt. Punt. I know we did punt, and to me, punt was almost more important than any other one, just because of that turnover and the block and all the stuff that can happen. we were lucky. We had really good gunners, and we've always had good gunners at Cannon. And I think that's just, most of them were just athletes. I don't even know if they were football players. They were track kids, lacrosse kids, who knows what.
And the biggest thing, Coach, I know early on preseason, you would just watch offense and defensive film and come to me and say, all right, I might not know these kids yet, but these numbers I want you to send with me for punt team today because these dudes get after it the entire. And it was like, I know early on we'd scrimmage or play a game, our first game, and you'd say, Coach, these two guys, I need them on special teams because I watched them throughout the film and like they give it everything they have. And that was something that I found important of working with you is put your best skill players at gunner because – if you're not, unless you're booming 55, 60-yard kicks every time, they're going to get down there, either down the ball or force the fair catch every single time.
Yeah, we didn't. I mean, we didn't have a lot of returns this year, and our gunners, it was kind of like, we had whatever was like 30 punts. We had 15 fair catches, whether they were great punts or not, whether they were punts going in or not, and then our gunners forced fair catches and, I mean, it worked. It just worked, it just worked for us. But I think it's important, to have that. Now, obviously, like special teams coaches, like give me the starters. Like I want to look good too. Don't give me the third string tackle and have him play gunner. You know what I mean? Like I want the best player too.
I think the only thing me and Coach Maury would get into it about is going through the depth chart. Like, no, dude, take that kid off of there. I don't want that kid. Like, it just so funny is like because that, and I will say that's something that I have to continue working on every single year is the balance between, having your backups only on special teams and then selling out to every starters on there. I think you got to find a good balance because, like you said, we can't roll out there with a bunch of third string guys or we're going to give up points on special teams. Yeah. But like there may be a kid, to your point, that plays both ways the entire game. Like that's the only time we can get him a blow, give him a break. So
I think, and I don't know like how you could, figure out the right way or the study to do it, but you take the second team guys, and if they were always the starters, but they knew what they were doing all the time. They knew what a 4 and a 5 did instead of just throwing a Brady, just some talented kid in there and be like, hey, run down there and make a play. I don't care what you do. But if they haven't done it and you know what I mean, where the other kids maybe have done it, maybe they're a little slower, not as strong, not as fast, but they know what they're doing. That's that balance, right? I know that, I mean, it's appreciated from I think, and I don't want to say like argument, but I think the communication between us having differences, whether it was, like, this is why I need that guy. And you're like, well, I can't because then we can't run our offense if he gets hurt. And you're like, yeah, well, we're going to get a punt block. So you're going to need more offense or, that I think all that stuff. I do think if there was one thing that like would help a special teams coach, like a little more, like I would love to know like more about like the offense and defense. What you're thinking is like, if we're going to go out in this series and we're going to run 4 wide every time. Okay. Now I know why like my gunners are going to be tired, stuff like that. But it's so hard during the game to figure out, and when your numbers are limited in a smaller school like that, you don't have 15 track kids on the sideline waiting to get in, makes it difficult, but you make it work. I think, the years that we had together with that I had with both of you, we made it work, one way or the other. I mean, there's only so much you can do. You go to, unfortunately, it felt like every senior year ended up with a freaking sob story at Raven Gap. You know what I mean? We're all walking the line. Kids are walking through the tunnel crying. And it's like, you knew it was going to be, you knew before the game this was going to happen, they're averaging 315 on the line. They did senior announcements the night before the pregame, and the first 15 kids are going D1, and all our kids are looking at Henry and Landon like, where are you going? I don't think you're going to Miami, and you're like, oh.
Well, I'll never forget.
We'll just get out of bounds, coach.
We've all coached against teams where it's like, all right, they got 2 or 3 stud guys. But this year, when I stood on the sideline at Raven Gap and I looked out there, and it was the first drive of the game, we're on defense. The quarterback has been offered by everybody. The running back's committed to Georgia. The tight end's committed to Alabama. the worst offensive lineman is going to ECU. And I said, wow, boys, like, we got to strap our helmets up and tighten our shoulder pads, because like, it was the most talented team. And then you flip it on defense, nose tackles going to Wake, linebackers going to Syracuse, DBs going to Cincy. I was just like, this is the most talented team I've ever seen pieced together. I was like, this is just outrageous.
Yeah, they were pretty legit. I know the guy that was, I talked to one of the coaches afterwards, and he's like, yeah, our receiver's the punter, and he basically catches it and he runs around, and if he's gonna get tackled, he kicks it wherever the hell it's like nobody knows where it's going.
Because Coach, we went out there first drive of the game 3 and out, and I was like, let's go. And then they snap at number 17, and he takes off 4th and 12. He takes off 12 yards, gets first down.
Yeah, what's his name? He's lined up in the backfield, and their guy's lined up out to the side. Remember, we were like, that guy's wide open over there, and obviously, like, I mean, let's face it, it's hard to see when all that's happening, and it's not something that they've shown before, and here we are. We're just like, we're defense safe. Oh, that's our punt return. Defense safe. Give coach the ball after the play's over. Doesn't matter where on the field. Make sure they don't have it. Sure enough, direct snap. And it's like, you saw him standing at 7 yards instead of 15. Like, do the math. But those are those basic things, right? You said, you need to learn and teach. Okay. Is number 7 the punter? No. Okay. Well, then something's up, and those things take time to teach. Maybe you only have a couple kids that are recognizing that can see over the line and do those things. But I don't know. I think there's like nothing better than high school, because really you don't know what you're getting. You know what I mean?
Year to year. Yeah. I mean, it's year to year too. It's like every year is so different.
Yeah. The outcome maybe of the game, but you really don't know how it's going to play out. I know we were there a couple years ago, and we did an onside with Colby. We practiced it. I told Colby, remember, he kicked it to our sideline instead of Landon. Jamie, that was with you.
Was that the playoff game? That was my last game.
We were going out, and he kicks it, and like the ball's sitting in the air, and our guy comes running by and then lets him catch it because he didn't know the rule. And here I am, like, did I not tell you the rule, or figure it out?
You probably did. You probably told him like 10
figure it out
times.
After you hit him, but don't watch him catch it. I can tell you, he didn't catch it. And I just remember, like, man, if we would have got that, and we were like, in our heads, we were like, man, if we got that, it would have been like, 35-17. We had a chance,
Yeah, I think the first half I think it was like a 14-7 game or something like that.
Yeah, because we tackled, we blocked the punt, and then they ran that punt fake, and Anderson stopped them.
I believe we got a punt. No, we roughed the kicker. No, we roughed the kicker, and they scored.
Did they?
Yeah, we went after it on like.
I
think it was 14.
I don't remember the bad plays.
I think it was 14-7 in this late in the second quarter, maybe like a minute. And I think I know exactly who it was. I'm not gonna say it, but he roughed the kicker, and and they gave him the ball back. The next play they scored, and it went from like 14-7 to like 21 or something.
That happened.
Yeah, good. I'm not bitter. We ended up getting blown out. So it's like, it is what it is.
Listen, talent shows up on Friday night, and there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, no, those are those games. You just like, hey man, let's just go out there and do the best we can.
We had poor Tucker Kelly at 5'8", 160 pounds playing nose tackle.
Yeah, that was the good old days. That was 2020.
Yeah, they were just picking him up and moving him. They weren't even pushing him. They were just like, you're going to go over here, and we're going to run down, But
we had like 8 guys hurt that week, before the game started.
Not on the bus,
coach,
not
my
on
hamstring.
The bus ride.
Yeah,
they weren't hurt on the bus ride, though.
No, not on the way back home. They were ready to get out of there.
It is what it is. You don't know. We were kids one time, too. So,
heck yeah. But
it's fun. I mean, I don't know. I think it's so much fun to be high school and be a coach. I wish I could be a head coach. I don't have like the desire to do it, but it would be fun to like, I think it's cool to do the big speeches and do, prepare all that kind of stuff. I've been around some, wild coaches and some speeches, and some that are out of control, and some that are like, I remember a good friend, we all know Junior Seau. I'll tell you, he made a speech before one of the Dolphins games we played. I swear to God, I was playing linebacker that game. I went out there like I am going to blow somebody up. And then like the play happens and you're like, I remember why I don't do this for a living. You know what I mean? But like he made a speech and it was just like, that guy's real. Like he believed everything he said. Like, I mean, I was blown away, and, even like, even Saban was like, "Nah, this guy's different." You know what I mean? Normally the coach is making speeches, but, Junior's like, I think I'm going to get this one. You know what I mean? And Nick was pretty damn good at making speeches, and we all know how good, he is and some of the stories that he has. And I mean, he was amazing, but I remember a couple like scenarios like that where I felt like, I don't know if I can make a speech like that. I'll never be that guy. You know what I mean? Pretty wild.
Yeah, I've I kind of dabbled in the old pregame speeches. I think there's just been several times where I think, man, I just nailed this thing, man. And then we go out there and didn't quite work out the way that we thought it was. I'll never forget Ravenscroft. We coming off the state championship year, and I think we're all kind of feeling ourselves a little bit in 2022. And it was our first home game. Ravenscroft's coming to town, and I just remember we were jacked up in the locker room, man. I was like, welcome to the show and all this stuff, and we got there and get beat. I was like, man, we just laid a complete egg. But yeah, those are fun, man. It's fun to try to make speeches and really you're trying to motivate young people to do things that they feel like they may not be capable
Yeah.
of doing. And I think that's what's fun about it.
I think that like, I'm from one era, Jamie's from another, and Dustin's from another. What motivates a kid now these days? I mean, if I didn't have a kid, I would have no idea. But some of the stuff that like, and I feel, and I'm just biased because like they're my kids, but like I feel like maybe they're a little more mature. I would hope.
Yeah.
But like some of the stuff that I hear that's happening that I can't say anything about, and I'm like, how does that get you all fired up? Like that's dumb. Like if you can't, like it's all the energy stuff and all this pump stuff. And I'm like, man, if you're not, it's Friday night, you're dressed up in a uniform. If you're not excited by now, it ain't going to happen when you drink that drink, before they cramped up. Right. And I used to say, I go, man, like I'm just, and then I think my wife told me one time, she goes, you got to realize like, you're 30 years older than these kids. Like it's different. And I was like, it's not,
Do you
Dang.
remember? And we don't have to say names, but do you remember the DB, the safety that we had? That he had his own videographer follow him around to all the games,
Yeah.
and like it was like film was like pregame. I mean, look, man, no judgment, but like that guy didn't ask me to be on the sideline. Can you please give me some credentials? Like this guy's out in our pregame, and he's like in the guy's face, like, and he would put out these
If I'm
highlights.
thinking of the same guy, man, but like
Drip King.
in today's world, man, that's everything to these
It
kids.
is. It is.
And I learned this with Landon, like, and because the recruiting game has changed completely.
Mhm.
It's changing, and even coaches don't know where it's going right now. But the recruiting game is basically like if you're not like if you're not a 5 or 6 star, you're basically recruiting yourself. You're like, here's my stuff, and you're just pushing it on coaches. And and I've talked to friends, I've talked to coaches for Landon, I've talked to my friends that are coaching, and some of them are head coaches in college, some of them are coaches in the pros that are looking at the college. And like, there's a lot of like, well, we don't really know 100% what's going to happen. But all we do know is that the more content on this kid's Instagram and Twitter, it makes him feel like, I remember we went to, I'm not sure which college. It was a big college. It was like, it was Landon and I, and we were either at Chapel Hill or Boston, one of these big schools. And there was a couple kids that were like, all they wanted to do was, hey, we're going to get the uniform and do the photos, and we're going to do all that. And then like, that's when like Landon found out that there were like 4 different colored lanyards on your, and they were like, oh, well, like if you got the blue one on, you're committed. If you got this one on, you're recruited. If you got this one on, and it kept going down the order. And I said, Landon, like, find somebody that looks like an athlete and see if he has your color on. If you don't have your color on, we might need to move to the next school. And there was like one monster kid or whatever, and he had like a different color lanyard on, and they're all in this meeting, like in this huddle, and then like one of the head guys grabbed him and like took him to the side, and Landon looks at me and was like, different color. I was like, hey man, it's not for everybody, you know? But
Yeah,
we just
it's a mess.
kind of joked around because like it's that different, you know. In today's culture, these kids, man, they need it. You know, we all know this instant gratification and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's a different world.
Yeah, there's a lot of comparison. There's a lot of and it's there now, and that's our reality. And I think it's taken me about 2 years to really, I don't know, last maybe 5 years to really come to terms with that. I think it really changed maybe right before COVID, but definitely since COVID. Like the whole landscape, and we all know why NIL and transfer portal and all that, but like it is probably the most stressful thing a head coach can go through when you have a group of players that really, really want to play at the next level. And the pressure that that coach, the high school coach, is under to try to make that happen is really a lot of times unfair because, heck, man, if it was up to me to give out offers, I would, but
Well,
it ain't.
well, you know,
And that's unfortunate, but
what's
part of
crazy is
life.
that like schools give out 500 offers. You know damn well they only got 20
Mhm.
scholarships.
Well, they're not committable. I mean, we had a kid, I'm not going to say when or who or what year or what school, but there was a kid that got an offer and he wanted to commit. The school said, no, you cannot commit. We're not ready. And the kids come back saying, well, why won't they let me commit? And I said, well, you're not high enough on their board
Right.
at that position. That
Yeah.
guy, they're waiting on that guy higher than you to commit before you have a committable offer.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate for the kids, but the schools have to protect themselves at this time too, because
Yeah.
you know you can have a commitment, then a decommitment, and it's just kind of a mess.
Well, it's crazy too because it's the misconception for the other kids who aren't getting those uncommittable, you know, the offers that aren't committable. So it's like, for example, you know, at Cannon, we would have kids all the time saying, "Coach, did you see so and so at this private school or this school got offered by so and so?" And you know, we live in a day and age where kids think, "Oh, I need to go to that school," and you know, the number one thing I would always say to the kids is, "Guys, listen, like." Offers these days aren't like they're not the same as what offers used to be. So then and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm a ninth grade kid that has the potential to turn out to be a stud player, you get an offer these days to start that relationship. But in 2 years, if you don't turn out to be what they think or play at the ability at their level, you're not going to have a committable offer. But it's a mind game with kids. Like, oh, if I go to this school, you know, oh, I can get an offer. And it's like, well, like you said, you need to see, are these committable offers or not? And I'm excited because I know we're going to get into an episode about recruiting coming up in the future.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said, I mean, we know. So back in the day, I mean, you know, when I got recruited, like I remember my dad sent out like 50 like VHS tapes. We looked in the newspaper and we're like, all right, here's the top 50 schools. We made like VHS tape and we sent them out. We didn't hear from like anybody except for like 5 schools. And there was no like offers or it was like a phone call you got at your house. You know what I mean? And I know now that like we've had, you know, a few schools and just going through this with, you know, my nephew with Landon, you know, even back with Todd when he was talking, yeah, there's a few kids that, you know, through the school. And it was like, you know, it used to be where like, you know, if you're that good, they're going to find you no matter where you are. But now, if you don't go to the camps, the 7-on-7s, these kicking camps, the big man camp, if you don't do all these little things to like push you up that board, you know, it gets harder. And then I know, you know, especially at Cannon, it's tough because like, unless you have like one, you know, main kid and you can say like, you know, let's say Henry was you know, our player and 50 schools are coming to see him, you know, they'll do what they have to do, but like, you know, they're going to watch film. You can only, you know, finagle and make up stuff to get them to see you. But eventually a coach is going to look at the film and go, yes or no, you know, and to some parents, it's a hard pill to swallow and be like, well, hey, and I think it's difficult because we all feel like our kids are better than the next kid. There is a little bit of, like, why him and not me? But, reality is, like, if you go to these places, I think it shows the kids and the parents, like, oh, that's what's out there. That kid's bigger, stronger, faster, more accurate, and I think the recruiting part is starting to just, I mean, besides, the money and all this other stuff that's happening in the world, I don't know where it's going in recruiting. I don't know if we're teaching kids that school doesn't matter. It's okay to go to 4 different schools and chase the money, you know? I don't know what we're teaching them, but, it is what it is, and they made the rules and everybody's following the rules, and the rules are you can do what you want, you know?
Yeah. And ultimately, parents are responsible, and I'm never gonna try to tell parents how to raise their children
Yep.
and what's best for them, and that's kinda where I'm at with it. I can try to do my my role as a head coach is to, uh, try to instill values that we all believed in, growing up playing sports
Sure.
and trying to put those in and then try to help them as much as we can get recruited. But if the parent wants to, transfer and kinda work the portal, heck, parents are working high school portal now as hard as anything, and
Coach,
and
coach
that's
just
fine
pound,
too.
coach just pounded his Pinot Noir.
Nice,
Ain't
nice.
much left, but
Hey man,
No,
listen,
Jamie, I
listen,
agree, man.
what's
I
difficult,
agree.
you get a lot of, and I mean, I didn't grow up with much, and I don't know how y'all grew up, but you get a lot of families and a lot of kids that are playing college football that don't have a lot. And when this
Mhm.
stuff comes up, 50, 100 grand is a lot of money.
It is. It
Now,
could be life changing for some people. I
it
mean, it really
is. The
can.
problem is the people who are managing that money have never probably had money,
Right.
and they don't know that, like, that they got to pay taxes and they got to do all these things. And then all of a sudden that money's gone because they had spent it or paid bills or done stuff. And so maybe those same people, whether they're friends, family, peers, whatever, coach or whatever it is, like, hey man, you deserve more. You get in the portal and you try to get more and you lose your scholarship. And now you're just
Mhm.
chasing a dream,
Yep.
when you already had your dream, regime was to play. I get it if you're good enough and you can make it. But I saw a stat. It showed that there were thousands of kids that went in the portal and don't have they're not part of a college anymore. They just had to go back to,
Crazy.
and I think, there's got to be some rule where, like, not a rule, but like, if you transfer, you stay 2 years. There's got to be something that just
Some kind of
shows,
regulation.
like,
Yeah.
education is important because out of all this stuff that's happening, there's not many kids that are going to make it to the next level. I actually was looking for a piece of paper earlier tonight. I had wrote down how many 5 stars make it in the NFL and 4 stars and 3 stars and 2 stars. And obviously it's going to be the 2 and 3 stars because there's just that many more 2 and 3 stars in this world than there are 5 stars. But every kid thinks, like, you got to be a 5 star to make it, and
What's what Haruki was talking about, and kind of his journey is like those 2 and 3 stars are grinders, man. They're not the ones that are the most gifted out of high school. They're not that they're probably a tweener, but they have an unreal work ethic. They have high character. They add a lot of value to their team, and they're the ones that end up making it because of that. It's the intangibles. It's the things that you can't really see on paper,
yeah.
and so I think that's probably speaks to that statistic.
Tom Brady, 6th round,
Yeah.
199th pick. I
I
mean,
mean, I look at one of my good buddies, Zach Thomas. He was like a fifth rounder. Jason Taylor was a sixth rounder. They're both Hall of Famers, but, like, they weren't like, Zach was too short and too slow. JT was skinny, whatever, small school. But, like, you know, there's something to be said for a guy that's gonna, be in the workout room, work out the longest, be in the film room the longest, work the hardest, and if you see those guys, and there's a lot of them, I was just saying those two because I know them pretty well. I mean, it's just hard. I mean, I know that when you're really good at a young age, things come easy and maybe you don't work as hard unless you're at, like, another level where other kids, you're at a club level where kids are really good and they are as good as you. But if you're always the best player, you don't have to work. You're not as pushed as much. And, I know that, like, when I went, I got invited to the combine. I kicked, like, I kicked 50. I don't want to say I kicked, I made 15 field goals at Syracuse. 15. The guys are kicking 30 in a season now. That was total. And I got invited to the combine, and, I got invited to punt, to kick off, to kick. I did it all. And then when I went to the Giants and I got an opportunity and I did everything there, and Coach Reeves gave me a spot on the practice squad. It was only like 4 or 5 guys. And he was like, listen, we just took you because you're an athlete, and you can do it all. We have 2 guys that are, one guy that was a little older, and our punter and the kicker had like his best year ever. So like, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. He's like, you need to kick on your own, just do it on your own. And then you're going to run cards and scout team. Now, I don't know what the hell that is. I've never done it in my life. I was a soccer player, and now you're holding up cards that like, just, you just follow the red line, or I would snap 7-on-7. I'm covering I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But all I knew is that like, if I didn't do it, I was probably going to be home doing nothing, And so like, I think the more you can do, and like you said, the work ethic, being in the weight room, being there all day, hanging out with the guys, showing the coach that you're, that like, hey, I'm valuable. And I told our kids at Cannon, and I tell them anytime I coach soccer, whatever it is, I think if I need to find a way to put you on the field and hide you, that's a problem. What I want to be as a coach is, how can I say, like, I can't take him off the field? Like, if I take him off the field, that's an advantage for the other team. And so I would tell the kids, like, you're find a way to get me on, coach. Like, oh, that's struggle. It's a struggle. Like, where can we hide them? You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's difficult these days to get a young kid if he's not motivated himself. There's just so many things out there, especially with the internet, to get you motivated, whether it's college, whether it's Instagram, whether, who knows what it is, but it's different than when we were kids,
And this may be a controversial take too. The market is definitely flooded with more talented players than ever, right? You have all these personal trainers, you have kids that have access to strength coaches in high school, nutrition plans. When we were at Cannon, we had like a physical therapist parent that would like work on our players and do all the stuff to get them ready. That stuff is just now coming to existence last probably 5 to 10 years. But what I think kids and parents don't necessarily realize is, I think there's more opportunity than ever to look at things like your character and how much value you add to your team and organization that could probably propel you beyond your athletic ability, because I think everybody's pretty good now. But like, if you have tremendous work ethic, I don't think that everybody else does like they used to. I don't think it's that hard to outwork someone right now.
No.
I mean, just from what I've seen.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you have it. Well, first of all, the availability of people out there to help you. We have a lot of like ex college players, ex NFL players, and athletes and trainers and PT people that are all like, that's their side job. You got an O-line coach coaching on the weekends. You got a linebacker, like this, like your show. I mean, how many young coaches they didn't have this stuff 20 years ago where people would learn by just turning on their computer. You had to like go read a book. You had to go to conferences. You had to travel, sign up. I mean, it was a big deal. The fact that you can have this on here and have people legitimately come on and, give some sort of, legitimacy to what you're saying is happening on the field now. And I think with kids today, I mean, it is, they're so good, I mean, the kickers are so good. They're kicking 50, 60 yarders like it's nothing. Like it's, oh, he missed a 60-yarder and you're like, oh, that kid sucks. I mean, guys are throwing the balls 50 yards flat-footed, you remember back in the day, if you ran a 4.4, you were almost like an alien. Now, if you're a receiver, DB, and run a 4.4, you're like, I don't know, he might be a 3rd-round pick. I mean, it's insane. But the kids are bigger, faster, stronger, and smarter, and they're just being brought up that way. You didn't have a personal trainer when you were 10. You were like, you got Mountain Dew and cowboy boots on.
And I think that kind of, we're getting ready to get into our rapid fire 2-minute drill, but I kind of think, like there's the big, debates out there about how like turf field is bad, because it doesn't give. But it's like, also like, think about how we train kids these days and how like elite athletes these guys are. It's like, if turf was a thing 30 years ago, do we have as many knee injuries? Because like you said, 4.3 speed is unheard of back then. You know what I mean? It's like we are building athletes so strong and fast nowadays. Like, is that some correlation to why turf is causing these injuries?
There's way more force into the ground now.
Well,
I
I
mean, it's
think,
just
yeah, like I go back, there was a guy that said one time he bought he was buying like football shoes and he bought them at like Dick's or something like that. And he was like, well, you can buy them there because you're not fast enough to cut to ruin the shoe or your ankle where like these other guys are. But I think turf is good in certain areas because the grass that the kids are playing on in some of these schools is not good and it's uneven and it's worse. And this gives about now in the NFL, right? When somebody's cutting your grass every single day in the stadium and it's tight, looks like a golf course, you'd rather be playing on that stuff. Played in New England one year. We played New England one year and we had Ricky Williams was running the ball. And I'll tell you, they had nothing but like that, that green sand you replace on the golf course.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say in between the hashes were nothing but sand. It was wet. It looked good on the TV. And it was like, and he still ran for something crazy, but it was like, oh, I get it. Like and in Chicago, the Bears field, I think, is run and maintained by the city. So like, it's not like they have a private contractor that does it every day. So like, it would be, you get out there in the wrong time of year and it's like, man, that grass was long.
Man, could you imagine playing on like in Oakland, like on the baseball field?
Listen, I got enough games between the Dolphins and the Marlins. And when I was there with the Dolphins, we had the Marlins and the Marlins were good. Man, it must have, I don't know how many years we went to the playoffs and even the world championship. And the dirt was, we played 2 preseason and 4 games. And I don't know how many, unfortunately, a few guys got hurt because you go from grass to that hard.
Yeah, man, it's a lip.
Oh, we put the ball down. I remember one game early in my career, we put the ball down. It was a short field goal, like 35 yards. And the holder put it down and he was spinning it. The ball was like still spinning when I kicked it, and then I missed it. And at that point, I was like 11 or 12 or 12 or 13 in a year. Like I had missed up until then. And I was like, oh, I was upset. And then it was like, that was Sunday. Monday comes around. Tuesday, we have 14 kickers in there working out. Jimmy was like, we can't miss short field goals. I'm like, man, did you I didn't say it, but I want to be like, the ball was like moving. Like you can't, like that we had missed one earlier and he went to push the ball down. It slid in the sand. And my holder was a great holder, is a friend of mine. I mean, the ball's like sliding down. And as he's sliding down, I hear him go, sorry, and just blasted it. Actually, I think there might be a video. I hit one umpire in the forehead. Check it out. But
Yes.
the fields were awful back then. Now it's like Miami's got like a tarp over it. Oh, it looks like a green. It's amazing, But yeah. Anyway,
That's funny.
I think that today's a different day. There's some of these
For sure.
Some of these high schools are just, they're as good as colleges.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Texas and Florida,
Man, I think that's a good transition into our rapid fire, man. So now that we're talking about stadiums and some of your, the ones that you don't like, what's your favorite stadium that you've ever kicked in?
Favorite? I mean, obviously I was born and raised in South Florida, so there was nothing like kicking at home, whether they went in or not, you know what I mean? There was just something being at home. There's you get to that South Florida kid that, 305, 954 area code down there, and you're born and raised down there. You've been looking at that field your whole life. And I never went to an NFL game before I played there. So
wow,
I have a special place for that place,
That's awesome. Does the ball fly better down there?
When it's not blowing, it's windy down there, like every other place,
Sure.
I mean, most people, back then you would, like, if you were in Miami, you played New England, like Miami, we would would schedule like Miami, like the Jets, Bill. We'd schedule them like in September, get them in the humidity and all that stuff, and then they would schedule us like the last week of the year. So we're like Buffalo and New England, January 1st. And you
30-mile-an-hour winds.
you're like, man, this place.
Well, Chicago probably had to be tough too, right?
Chicago was
wind.
terrible. Chicago was terrible. My last game in the Green Bay, the high was 4. That's stunk.
What year was that, Coach?
When I last game up, actually, it was the year. So I was in Seattle. We had just won a playoff game against the Saints. It was actually Marshawn had the big run there.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So So I've had a couple like really exciting games in my life. Not all of them turned out to be good, but they're memorable. You know what I mean?
No doubt. All right, Coach, I got a 2-part question. So the first, I'm going to ask both parts for you answer. So the first part is, what is your most clutch kick of your career? And the second part is, was it this picture?
That's it, man. That's great.
So that looks like Detroit. And I think
Yeah, it does.
so that's John Kidd. So John Kidd was he was like 40, and he was our holder. He was also our third string quarterback. He had run a fake and pulled his hamstring. I think I punted that game. It was like one of my first games, but we won that on a field goal. That might have been Thanksgiving.
That's cool.
I'm not sure.
That was from the birthday post I did for you. I had to go find it real quick. I was like,
what a vertical, huh? It's amazing.
That's it right there. That's good.
I mean,
look at Coach. Look at his starter, man. Like that's
Man, I don't even know if I was born yet.
the uniforms were different. We used to have like baggy clothes. There's no like tight fitting, like
there's no tight fitting. You had to put the rubber bands.
Oh, there was so much stuff tucked into your pants. It looked so bad.
That's awesome, man. Everything was shiny.
I mean, memorable kicks. I remember in New England, there was one year I went 6 for 6. My grandpa had just passed away. And I flew up there, I think late. And, it's one of those deals where like, you don't really care what's happening that day because all that other stuff happened. And I remember going up there, and then we went there. Maybe we played there like 3 times. We played New England like 3 times in like a month. And we went there and I think it was either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And it was another one of those like famous games where we had won the game I got jinxed on TV. I found out I had missed one earlier. The guy was like, he's made 20 in a row. This is a guarantee. And then I missed it. And then at the end of the game, I made one to win it. And it was like before Christmas. And I have a newspaper clipping somewhere. It says like Merry Christmas on it. But it was just good because my whole family was back at my house waiting for me to get home. We had just had like, my oldest son was just a baby, so that was a pretty big kick just, to be able to do it. I don't know. I could tell you every kick I missed. I don't know, I made a lot more, but, there's a few, I had a big kick in Denver one year. And then obviously the ones at home are always pretty important.
So you played for a lot of teams, and this may be a hard one to answer, but who's your favorite or best coach you've ever played for, and why?
Oh, well, like you said, I played for a bunch of good coaches. I mean, Jimmy was great because Jimmy was just kind of like, this is how it goes. Like, you miss it, we get people in here and we're going to make it. And then before my contract with Jimmy was up, Jimmy said basically like, I don't pay kickers, but you've done a hell of a job. Somebody will like you. And then he retired 2 days later, and I ended up signing back with Miami. But he was straightforward. He said, you got to do better. Like there was no beating around the bush, where he would say one thing and say something else. Saban was like that, when I was with the Giants, I mean, he actually, like in our meeting at the end of the year, he was like tearing up, and I was tearing up, and I didn't know what he was tearing up for because I was a nobody. But he was just such a good dude, Dan Reeves, that like you almost want, like, I was trying to follow him, and he went to Atlanta, and he calls me. He's like, "I'm taking you wherever I go." He goes to Atlanta. He's like, "Man, there's this guy named Morton Anderson there, and I don't think we're going to be able to cut him for you." And I was like, "Why?" Because he's great, like, why would you want a 12-year all pro and me who's never done anything? You know what I mean? But he found me a job, and then, but all those coaches, they all had their own little thing. I went to Seattle my first year. Mike Holmgren came up to me and he said, "I don't know what you do and how you practice, but I just need you to show up on Sunday." And I barely talked to the guy the entire year. And he was just like, "Whatever, like, just do whatever you're doing." Like, and some coaches we would come in Saturday, and this is how we got into the special teams, is like sometimes the Saturday meeting was led by a special teams player, and you'd go over the game plan without the coaches just to see who knew. And so, as you get older, you kind of like, it's not like a bossing around thing. It's you all get together and you talk about what's going to happen tomorrow and what they do. But as you get older, sometimes you get involved in that a little bit more and you get to handle a little bit more. But I think the coaches that say the least sometimes are good. Sometimes, I mean, we were in Chicago with, Dave Wanstead. It was blowing like 40 miles an hour. We went to kick the ball. We went to, get a field goal in. And Dave says to me, he goes, "Lindo, I've seen you golf before." This is before a kick. "I've seen you golf before. When it's breezy, swing easy." And I'm like, "What?" Like, thank God it was a short field goal, because I'm out there going like, what? Like, my golf game was awful at the time. Last thing I wanted to think of was a golf swing right now. But I mean, I know what he was saying was like, don't try to overdo it because it's windy. But I'm like,
That's
man,
funny.
don't talk to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. Obviously you can't say that to the head coach, but,
That's
I
funny.
think, all those things,
Yeah.
you kind of, you make your, what do you call, uh, you make your personality becomes all these people. You learn something, and that's something that I've learned. If I took one thing from everybody, and I did, because they were all great to me,
No doubt. Coach, last thing that I want to kind of ask you, the new kickoff rules, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel like this, or are you happy about it? Like, how does it make you feel?
Yeah, I feel exactly like that. I think it's awful. Um, I think the kickoff rule is terrible because, and I've spoke about this multiple times. I think that, it's one of the most exciting plays in the game is the kickoff. And, if you go back to when Hester returned one in the Super Bowl, or even I think it was Tim Dwight returned one. It was Atlanta like years ago. You know, um, now
I think it was Andre Rise in Green Bay.
you don't
98.
really have to be like. I mean, it's just another guy now that's returning the kicks. It's not it's not the track champion, NCAA track champion they're recruiting, who could barely catch a ball. But if he catches it, I remember, in one of the Pro Bowls, the returner for Bates from Carolina was like an Olympic sprinter or something. And he would catch it and like fake take a knee. And before he did, he would be out the gate. And like people were just like watching him run. You were like, "Why ain't catching him either?" But now you're just kicking it in the end zone. The rules, I think what they should have done, and I had said this and spoke about it before, had they backed him up 10 yards, maybe it creates some like chaos with the roster. Do we have a kickoff guy and not a kickoff guy? We need a returner. You kind of eliminate all the big guys on the field because they don't want to run 75 yards. So you kind of, it becomes more like a punt, and there's just so much more space. The offense would start a lot closer, because there will be less touchbacks. So there'll be more points, which is what you would think the NFL wants, more scoring, more touchdowns, that kind of stuff. Instead of guys just kicking it through the goalpost every time, which it seems like everybody can do right now. The only other thing they can do is what they did to us back in the day, is they put that new kicking ball in, which is where they would just send the refs the balls, and then the ref would just hand it this like concrete piece of crap, and you kick it as far as you can, and it would go like 30 yards no matter what. And if they put the ball rule in, all these things will change. All the 65-yard field goals, all that stuff. They changed that when I think, when Tony Romo got that slippery ball in that field goal game in Seattle. But I think it hurts the game. I think there's nothing better than guy hitting it 70 yards on a kickoff and watch everybody try to tackle this, like, this track star. We don't have those guys anymore. Those, Leon Washington, Dante Hall,
Not to
all those
all.
Jermaine
Yeah.
Lewis, all those like specialist guys before. That's what they got recruited for. They were even drafting Desmond Howard. I mean, all these superstars.
Or even the guys that are trying to make impact plays that are on, down the depth chart a little bit. You think about Terrell Davis. He's a 2,000-yard rusher, was on special teams, and that's how he kind of made his mark in Denver.
Yeah,
I was listening to a story about that.
I think I put that on film with Dustin. I showed the kids earlier, he played on there in preseason and he blew up some kid. And next thing you know, he's off special teams and he's a Pro
Super Bowl
running.
champ. Yep.
I mean, it happened. There's a lot of those guys. You look at Pro Bowlers that started off on some sort of special teams, but kicking the ball in the end zone and taking a knee. I mean, it's really depressing because you think it's just easy to do. It's not that easy. I know now from 65 you kick it in there, but when we were kicking from the 30 and the balls were, you weren't allowed to like tickle them. You know what I mean? Like you didn't get them for whatever. And you look back there and, I remember playing, we played against Hester and many times, and those guys would stand at the end line and they would catch it on the run full speed. And there was no way that he wasn't going to return it. And everybody on the field believed he was going to score, every player on the field. And he did an awful, like too many times for a kicker to look at. And there was nothing more exciting than that. Like, I mean, there was just nothing more exciting than a big kickoff return. And they have ruined that. And they say it's for concussion related stuff. I know they're trying to get rid of the tush push. If you ask any linebacker or fullback how many concussions they have a game running full speed into each other, they probably don't remember, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, Coach, man, this has been really fun. I know before we get out of here, I do want you to talk a little bit about your Mare Foundation, about the Mare Foundation, and how people can kind of help out with that.
So, this will be our 5th year. My wife and I, we're very fortunate. We have a lot. We've done a lot in this in our life together. And so 5 years ago, we decided that for Christmas, we didn't want to get any. We did different things. Whether it was one year we brought like 100 tents and sleeping bags and all kinds of like stuff down to the tent city down in Charlotte. We've done stuff for military. And so we decided we were going to start something ourselves, and we started this. And it's really we support many different foundations, but the main one in Iredell is the foster homes, and so the children's homes of Iredell County. And so we've been doing that for 4 years, and we've raised about $200,000, which we gave to them. And they're able to do a lot of things with these kids. And we're hoping to grow it. We've been doing it ourselves, which is very difficult because we have our big event right in like the middle of like high school football season, as you both know. And appreciate you giving me time off sometimes to take care of some of those things. But I think it's important to give back, and we've been able to do that. We've been able to see results from what we're doing and from all the people who have donated and been fortunate enough to help us out throughout this process. So it's worked out great. It's just, the Mare Foundation. We have one big event. We might have a golf event this year. I'll let you guys know. If we do that, it's a lot more work. I don't know if I have that time, but the dinner event, is in November. It's the same every year, and it's been great. We feel good about helping out kids. We have 2 to 3 speakers every year, and it takes a lot for these young kids who've been through all kinds of stuff and to come up and speak to the people, but it's really helped out and got these kids their lives out there, so the people in our community will help us and be able to donate and support these kids and the charity itself. Thank you.
No, that's man, those are some things that are, mean way more to people than football. And I mean, I know the people that you work with are so appreciative of y'all's work with that. But Coach Wynn, we really had fun on this one, man. This was excellent. Good catching up with you. And so Dustin, we'll kind of let you send us off.
Yeah, Coach, appreciate it once again. I can attest for Bolton and I, just talking with Jamie when y'all worked together before I even got to Cannon, and you shed a lot of light on us and taught us a lot of things and the depths of special teams and the drills. So we appreciate you. You've accelerated our career in special teams like no other. And guys, if you're listening, we want to make sure that we still have our Pro Quick Draw link in the bio. Sign up for a 7-day free trial. Reach out to them; they'll get you set up. Great customer service there. But this was fun, and stay tuned for next time.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it. And hopefully, obviously, we'll be keeping in touch. Good luck to everything you guys do. Appreciate it.
You too, Coach. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the Coach Speak podcast. If you're interested in being a guest speaker on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at coachspeakpodcast1@gmail.com. And if you have a question for our Q&A segment, don't forget to submit it through the form in the episode description. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.